Francis was in the art scene in Melbourne, as Ross said, and when that exhibition came from to Melbourne, Sydney and Adelaide, it was French and English contemporary art, came in 1939, and that really knocked their socks off. I mean, you know, Francis told me that when they saw that, they went, geez, what have we been doing? This is it, you know. Mind you, most of these paintings were painted in France in 1908 onwards, you know, so it had been happening for 30 years, a lot of it, but it hadn't hit Australia in the real. They'd seen some reproductions, but to see it in the real is a different matter. You see a Picasso this size, or a Matisse, you know, 6x4, you know, pretty serious stuff. And Francis also, particularly like George Braque, Juan Gris, Picasso, you know, I mean, but the thing is about Francis, he had the nous to go, well, this is good, you know, and all the rest of the artists, Nolan and Wood wasn't here, I don't think then, but Dobell, Albert Tucker, all of them, they were just knocked out. This was it. And so consequently, this particular painting here is very influenced by Roel Dufay, a French painter. Yeah, so, you know, there's a bit of influence because it knocked them out, you know.
Do you know whereabouts it is? Maybe?
Oh, no idea. You know, it's probably, he just made it up, you know, and put some flags in, you know. He liked the idea of a bit of colour there and put some flags in and, you know, you know, nobody.
Banners in the morning.
Is that what it's called, is it?
No,
I don't know. And I think this one here, then the exhibition he had in 1941, it's very hard to tell which ones were in it, but I think this one here was in it. I think it's called Annunciation in the catalogue that Robert gave me. And talking to Ozzy Hall, I think that one was in the exhibition, it's called Annunciation, but I don't know why. But I have seen very early medieval paintings of, you know, the angel and that, but I don't know what Francis's mindset was when he, if that's the one, I don't know. This one here?
Can I just make one quick comment?
Yeah.
I assume Francis had never been to Balmoral Beach in Sydney, but the geography of that is actually very much like Balmoral Beach.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah,
just a speculation.
Yeah, maybe. This one here, he painted that painting there for Ozzy Hall's wedding. Ozzy Hall got married and he painted it for his wedding. And and he gave it to Ozzy. These two were owned by Ozzy Hall. But we never ever saw them in Melbourne. And Paul Smith told me he never ever spotted them at all. Because Ozzy and Francis, you know, were, you know, not getting on. And so consequently, Ozzy had them in the back room somewhere, you know. We only saw them later, you know. This little one here is called, that was in the exhibition of 1941, and I think this one was, and it was called Portrait of a Self-Realised Soul. That's what Francis called it. And he signed it, Francis Brabazon, in 1941. Yeah, so that's what he called that one there. Yes. Oh yeah, and he had it not for sale, and I think this one was 20 odd guineas. They were much dearer than the Nolans at the time. And we'll go over here. And this one here is nurses dancing at Bonneville military camp. There's a hospital there, and that's what Robert told me where the setting is of it. And I'll leave that one for a minute. And down at the end there, that one is a painting of D24 tower. The police headquarters in Melbourne was a big tall tower.
Russell Street.
Yeah, Russell Street, that's right. And then this little one here, the little kettle, sort of a mixture of a kettle come landscape sort of duality thing. That I think they're all painted around the early 40s. This one here, it's 1946, which is a hell of a lot later. And there's a big gap between when he painted the earlier ones and when he painted this one. And Robert seemed to think that that would have been painted when he was up at Camden with the Baron. and as Ross pointed out, like a meditative sort of thing, you know. And we don't know if there's any other pieces from that time, but that one survived that period, you know. Yeah. But yeah, what else can I say about them? Nothing much really. Well, you'd ask Francis things, and I remember one thing he said to me. He said, "Look, I'm not a teacher. I'm an informer." So you take whatever you. I didn't say, well, what do you mean by that? But I'll read a little bit here. What he said. He wrote a letter, and he was talking to me, you know. And he's saying that what Barber stressed most of all was honesty when you're painting or writing. Now, John.
Or dancing.
Yeah, right. Now, John, you must be very careful, as I must also. As you by now have probably found out, real art is dependent upon real honesty. Barber stresses honesty in everything we do or say. In art and poetry, it means not making a brushstroke or putting down a line, or putting down a word which one does not know. There can be no faking, no thinking that one can get away with it, as he hates faking and posing. One can fool oneself so easily. One may even fool everybody else for a time, but one cannot fool him, for he knows who he is and judges whether each line or bit of colour is faithfully done. With much love, Francis. You will no doubt be glad to know, this is in 1976, you will no doubt be glad to know that there was some new singing at the anniversary last month, Francis. That's these guys, yeah. That's it.
John, before you go,
yeah, well,
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you have anything further to add? Ross was suggesting or saying that Francis had more of an influence on Australian painting than has been credited. Do you have it as a painter yourself? Do you have any comments?
Well, I don't know. You can speculate. I mean, he didn't do a lot of work, but had he kept going, I felt he's so sharp. I mean, Nolan and all those guys, they don't let you hang out with them unless you're up to the speed. And he was probably more up to speed than some of them, you know. And so, and like Adrian Rollins once told me that he interviewed Nolan once, and Nolan said that Francis was a great influence on him. Because they lived in the same building, and they throw ideas around, and Francis was no slouch, and so he'd be saying, no, I reckon this and that, whatever. But you can't really say because he didn't do a lot of work. But he told me once that he really liked painting, but he found that he couldn't express himself with that medium, and he decided to switch to poetry and words. And but like, when you look at the other works of Nolan and Tucker and all of those guys, Francis was right in that league, and probably better than some of them at this particular stage, And as Ross said about shapes, there's an interesting story about shapes. I used to always show him the latest painter I was interested in or something like that, and there was a New Zealand painter, and a very good one. And I showed him a book, and he looked through it, and a lot of the stuff was abstract, And he said, look through it all. Interesting shapes, aren't they? Basically a put down. But, because by that stage, he then was... stuff shapes, we're into looking at the God-man, forget the shapes, forget all that, now it's God in human form, abstract stuff's finished. So, so that's, so like you can't really equate whether he would have or not.
Yes. And John, before you go... Any comments that Francis made about other painters that you remember?
Yeah. As I said, I used to show him all these different painters, and he'd basically put them all down. But once I showed him a book of American painter, Philip Guston, and he said, "Oh, shit, this guy's got something happening here. He's good, isn't he?" Philip Guston is a good painter too, but so he did, he was the only guy that he thought was, that I showed him. But yeah, so that's about it.
Well, John, before you go, any other little treasures that you're holding back on?
No, well, I might say them later. I can't think what they are now. Let me just have a quick look here. I've made a couple of notes. I used to like that Ezra Pound thing, Make It New, but he had a different slant on it, Oh, also there was I once when I was coming up here, I found a Time magazine article that Ezra Pound had just died, and but Ezra Pound had been silent, Yeah, Ezra Pound had been silent for the last couple of years of his life. So I took that article and showed him, because he sent a copy of Stay With God to Ezra Pound. But I don't know if that had anything to do with that. But anyway, he was tickled pink that Ezra Pound was silent for the last couple of years of his life.
He refers to Ezra Pound in Stay With God.
Sorry?
He refers to
Yes, that's right. Yeah. But I think he sent him a copy of it, but Ezra Pound never replied. That's what he said.
And John, what about the early painters like Fra Angelico and all those sort of
Oh, he loved all that stuff.
So he's into that then?
Oh, yeah, he loved all that stuff. Yeah. He loved all of that. Up to, like he says, up until the medieval times, they consider it the Dark Ages, but in actual fact it was the Age of Light.
Yeah.
After the medieval times, with all of the bloody, Baroque and, Renaissance, was all to do with the self,
Yeah.
You stand in front of your painting rather than behind it, And but the early stuff, he loved all that. The real early stuff and the early Buddhist art, and he talked about that and those, all of the. But he was very good. Like you were saying that but he didn't do a lot of painting. But by God, he kept right up to the play, and he could answer. You could talk to him about painting and that, and he'd pick you up all the time, And so he was. He knew what the process was, like that. Ross was talking about. I don't know what it was now, but anyway. But it refers to what I'm going to say now. There's a great quote of John Cage, the musician. He says that when I'm in the studio, he said, I'm in there and I'm working, and I have all of my friends with me in my head. I have all my friends with me, and gradually, one by one, they go. And then I'm left there alone, and then now and again, I go. So that's that's the process of painting. When you're painting, 90% of the time, your head's full of shit, And but then there is the rare moment where you do something, you don't even know you've done it really. And you look back and you go, oh, well, that works quite well. So, that's the state to get into, which is very rare, but you can get into it sometimes. Like Ross was saying, a meditative thing, you can get into that state where you're sort of not there. And you're just doing it and it's all happening, And then when you realise that, say you're doing about 4 or 5 faces, and you're going away and you're doing them and they're going really well, and you think, oh shit, that's not bad, And you do this next one, and all of a sudden, Christ, can't get it. So once you're out of the way, you're fine. But when you're there, it's a mess,
That was your statement.
What?
Because of a question from Roy.
Yeah.
That's not a question.
What?
I'm just wanting to say that Francis Brabazon was very impressed with John Parry's art. I was round when Francis received this one here, and Francis was absolutely smitten. He said, he's managed to capture the eyes of God.
Yes. Yes.
Well,
John, just Robert, do you have anything to say about Francis's painting at this point, or are you saving it for
Just
tomorrow?
on what John Parry was just explaining
about the way you work as an artist. Braque's explanation of it was that he loved the accidents of painting. That which you did not prepare, which came up of its own accord when you're out of the way.
That's good, yeah. Yeah, right.
That is one of John's paintings over there in the corner, this magnificent piece.
And this is the first one that we got when Francis said, there's a young one, there's a painter arrived.
Oh, John.
Yeah.
Did Francis ever, William Blake was a romantic?
William Blake?
Yeah, he was a
Yeah,
romantic
oh yeah,
poet,
great.
And, Ross was referring to the romantic poet.
Yeah.
Did you ever comment upon Blake for his etchings?
Oh, I think he loved Blake's paintings, yeah. Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Except Blake was a painter rather than a poet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he loved Blake's stuff. He had good taste.
Thank you, John.